Late at night in the hospital, corridors shrouded in silence. All that could be heard were the sounds of machines and the faint breaths of patients. Yet in this peaceful place, an unseen shadow of death lurked secretly. It hinted at the presence of someone who continued to take lives in a place meant to save them. In the early 2000s, in the quiet northern German towns of Oldenburg and Delmenhorst, a series of inexplicable deaths occurred in two hospitals trusted by the local community. At the time, many patients died from heart failure or circulatory abnormalities. But behind these deaths was Niels Högel, a nurse who was supposed to care for them. His actions would later come to light as Germany's worst medical serial murder case. An inexplicable pattern was observed within the hospital. On days when a particular nurse was on duty, an abnormally high number of patients would suddenly suffer cardiac arrest or deterioration, and that nurse would repeatedly attempt heroic resuscitations. This was no simple medical error. Medical procedures meant to save lives were being twisted by an unseen malice, turning into tools to orchestrate death. Initially, these incidents were treated as isolated, unfortunate medical accidents. There's evidence that the hospital attempted to conceal suspicious internal activities. The police, too, conducted only limited investigations, treating them as isolated incidents and overlooking a broader pattern. The public was led to believe this was merely a series of unfortunate coincidences, but the truth was the exact opposite. It was a terrifying secret, protected by organizational silence and indifference. Behind this string of horrors was a single nurse, Niels Högel. In front of colleagues and patients, he played the part of a diligent and kind professional. However, deep within him lurked a terrifying psyche that reveled in manipulating patients' lives, finding pleasure in controlling both death and resuscitation with his own hands. To demonstrate his resuscitation skills, or perhaps simply out of boredom, he repeatedly administered drugs to patients, inducing critical conditions only to attempt to save them again. Högel's horrifying method was cunning and ruthless. He secretly administered powerful medical drugs to patients, such as Julericmol and amiodarone, which manipulate heartbeats, and lidocaine, which can be life-threatening in large doses. This caused patients to suddenly suffer cardiac arrest or severe circulatory failure. Then, Högel would appear as a hero, performing resuscitation procedures, fulfilling his sense of purpose and superiority. This was a systematic mechanism of murder, abusing medical knowledge. The number of patients whose lives were taken by Högel totals at least 85 confirmed cases. However, investigators believe the actual number of victims is likely over 200. For them, Högel was a nurse to whom they entrusted their lives, and that trust was brutally betrayed. Patients became tools to satisfy his abnormal need for approval and power, their dignity stripped away, quietly losing their lives. Many families were plunged into deep sorrow, never knowing the true cause of their loved ones' sudden deaths. The truth, long concealed, was brought to light by an incident in Delmenhorst in 2005. A patient, miraculously recovering after being administered drugs by Högel, provided a testimony. This incident prompted a serious toxicology investigation into past suspicious deaths. When lethal doses of the drugs Högel administered were detected in bodies previously deemed to have died of unknown causes, all lies collapsed, and his ruthless crimes were scientifically confirmed.
Högel's crimes were by no means cleverly concealed. Wards where he worked recorded statistically significantly higher mortality rates, and some colleagues questioned his actions and raised warnings to superiors. However, these warnings were ignored or intentionally suppressed. Prioritizing the hospital's reputation, or due to negligent management, he was left unchecked for years, continuing to claim new victims. This was not merely an investigative failure, but suggests an organizational dark side that attempted to conceal the truth.
The nightmare of Niels Högel continued for a long period, from 1999 to 2005, across 2 hospitals. He came to be known by the moniker Angel of Death only after the horrifying scale and brutality of his crimes became clear. During the subsequent thorough reinvestigation, it was revealed that the moments many victims fell prey to him were not coincidental, but rather timings he had intentionally chosen. This is not just a serial murder case, but a terrifying story of darkness deeply rooted within the medical system itself.
Niels Högel was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment for multiple murders. However, his imprisonment does not mean the darkness of this case has completely vanished. Why was a person like him able to commit crimes for years in the sanctuary of a hospital? The organizational silence, the inadequacies of the monitoring system, and a trend where the dignity of life is lightly regarded. Unless these fundamental issues are resolved, angels of death could reappear in different forms. What should we learn from this terrifying past?